in for Eldrin today's Beyond the Headline. Lucky to be along with you on a rainy day here in Johannesburg. I love that was attitude of gratitude. Eh? I like that. We're going to have an attitude of gratitude, but also an attitude of finding out things beyond the headline, because that's the name of the show. Welcome to it. It's an interesting day in Johannesburg today, clearing up. Hopefully it's beautiful wherever you are. If it's not, let's try and make it beautiful together. Speaking of the weather, that'll be something we speak about just after 5 o'clock today. El Nino weather conditions may boost local agriculture production, which is good news. It's a lovely title, this. Chief Economist at the Agricultural Business Chamber of South Africa. Also the author of The Country of Two Agricultures. You might have heard about Wandile Shehlobo, and we'll be talking to him about what is the current predictions when it comes to agriculture in South Africa. It seems as if things are looking good. Still early days, because apparently the farmers haven't even planted yet. You kind of wonder, I was going to say something rude about farmers, but I would never, because they work hard. 2% year-on-year increase of agriculture, which is great news. There are intentions to plant, not planting yet. And the Weather Service is saying, get it in the ground because we have some good rain ahead of us. Libya begun deportation process of 600 undocumented Egyptians. We will find out what's happening up north. Then, and I'm doing a little bit of research on this because I want to find out, there's something called a mini nuclear reactor, but then there's also something called a micro reactor, and I think there's two different things here. But South Africa are looking to get a mini nuclear reactor as early as 2026, according to newspaper reports. G5 Capital are involved there. Each one is capable of delivering 80 megawatts of power. And they want to get 4 units. So 4 units, you plug them all into the grid, and it'll create 320 megawatts of power. But I've also reading about a micro nuclear reactor, and a micro nuclear reactor fits in the back of a truck. You know, like a semi-truck? You can fit a nuclear reactor on the back of a semi-truck. But I think these are slightly bigger than a micro reactor. So we will find out what the difference is between a mini and a micro nuclear reactor, and find out what Cape Town is planning on doing. There's already protests. The South African Faith Communities Environmental Institute are saying that it's a bad idea. We will find out why. I keep hearing that nuclear is the cleanest energy we have at the moment, but maybe not. Staying in Cape Town, the South African Transport and Allied Workers Union, concerned about the comments made in an editorial written by the MSC of Transport in the Western Cape, calling for the privatization of the city of Cape Town's port that is under the custodian of Transnet. They think it's a bad idea because they will lose jobs if things go private. Then, that's El Nino weather. What else? That's about it for now. As always, phone lines are open, SMS number is open. You're more than welcome to get hold of us. We'd love to hear from you. We will be taking calls and SMSs and reading your tweets as well. I haven't opened my Twitter account yet, so let's open the Twitters. You still go to Twitter for X. I'm going to call it Twitter until they change the website address, because it's still twitter.com. There we go. We get notifications there. So, really looking forward to engaging with you in the show. Welcome to it. It's 10 minutes past 3.
Here, there, and everywhere.
Update, but we're going to start by going to the Senzo Miwa trial, get our daily update there. The investigating officer in the case has denied allegations that one of the accused, Bongani Ntanzi, was assaulted when he was booked out of police cells for further investigations. Vuzimuzi Mokhane is currently being cross-examined in the High Court in Pretoria. 5 men on trial for the gunning down of the Bafana Bafana captain in Vosloorus, east of Johannesburg, back in 2014. Defense is challenging the admissibility of confession statements of 2 of the accused in a trial within a trial. Defense lawyer Tulani Mngomezulu has questioned Mokhane. Let's hear more from our reporter watching all the scenes in the court. Pearl Makubani joins us again. Pearl, still this trial within a trial. What happened so far today?
Good afternoon, John, and the listeners. Well, we still have Sergeant Mokhane, who's one of the investigating officers officers still on the stand. Well, Ngomezulu, who represents accused 1 and 2, has wrapped up his cross-examination. And the one thing he's been, focusing on is the actual alleged assault that happened, where he alleges that Ntanzi was coerced into signing the confession statement. And he asked Mohani about one incident when he was booked out of the police cell for about 17 hours as to what transpired during those 17 hours. However, Mohani says that there were other cases that he is linked to, and they can't divulge because those are ongoing investigation. The court, though, has ordered the investigating officer to provide a note detailing those cases, and every council must receive them, and he must receive them, but they are all sworn to secrecy.
All to find out if these alleged confessions, can be put in front of the court.
Yes, exactly. I mean, this is crucial evidence that the state needs, and if they have admitted, or we hear what the admissions are, it should strengthen their case. So, but none of the accused want these confessions to be read out, and the other defense counsels, that being for accused number 3 and 4, have opted not to cross-examine the witnesses with regards to this part. But we've seen as Andile Mshololo, who represents accused number 5, although the client has not been named thus far, standing up every time and taking the opportunity to cross-examine the witnesses as to, we don't know what's contained in the contents, but there must be a reason for her to want to challenge this part of the evidence.
Also, if these alleged confessions were taken without by force, you don't necessarily want that, right?
Not at all. I mean, there's also the issue as to whether or not these assaults were reported to anybody else or the iPad. One of the comments that were made by Mohani is that if they claim to have been assaulted in the manner that they were, including choking and electrocution and so forth, and they would have been taken to hospital, because these sounds like injuries that would be obtained because of that alleged assault, but none of them have opened a case against any of the police officers or a report with that regard.
You say there's cross-examination happening. Are there gaps in the story, or is the police officer sticking to the story and everything seems to be going in the same direction?
The police officer is sticking to his story. I mean, we don't know exactly, where the stops were made while they were investigating the other cases. One of the things that have been highlighted now, just before the adjournment by Andile Mshololo for case number 5, is a case that happened in Nongoma. Bongani Ntanzi was arrested, under that case, which is a murder case in KwaZulu-Natal. So they're just questioning him as to why hasn't he gone to court with regards to this matter? If you detained him about a KwaZulu-Natal matter, why then does the first law's issue take precedent, and this Nongoma case is still pending, if this was the charge that was preferred against that case initially?
Is there a timeline for how long this will take, or will this take as long as it takes?
We actually don't know, because there have been mentions of other police officers who are in the investigating team as to they also need to come back and, and account and respond to certain aspects that Sergeant Mohani has not been able to explain.
All right. Paul Magubane, watching all the scenes and the goings-on in the Pretoria High Court. Thank you very much.
If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump repeatedly clashed with the judge and defended his family's business as he testified in a civil fraud trial in New York. During almost 4 hours on the witness stand, Trump disputed claims that he received deceived banks and aired grievances with the case. The judge told him to stop treating his court appearance like a political rally. Prosecutors are seeking a $250 million US fine and severe business restrictions for him as well. The BBC's North American editor Sarah Smith reports.
I think it went very well.
After a chaotic day in court, Donald Trump headed straight for the cameras, insisting he's being hounded for purely political reasons.
Everything we did was absolutely right. To think that we're being sued and spending all this time and money, and yet people being killed all over the world, that this country could stop. With inflation and all of the other problems that this country has, I think it's a disgrace.
He claims the New York Attorney General who brought the charges against him is a racist who wants to stop him becoming president again.
I will not be bullied. I will not be harassed. This case will go on.
Inside the court, Mr. Trump repeatedly lost his temper as the prosecution argued he's not worth nearly as much money as he claims. On the stand, Donald Trump has been very combative, repeatedly sparring with the judge. He's been told off for making speeches instead of answering questions. The judge told him, "This is not a political rally, it's a courtroom." He posted this about the judge, taking a quote from the proceedings out of context. He's baiting a judge who will decide this case without a jury. During a court break, he suggested he's been told to zip it, but obviously didn't heed that advice. Mr. Trump's lawyer's legal strategy is to complain that the judge is biased against our client and is treating him unfairly.
The judge doesn't like when President Trump explains what actually happened because it's not good for his narrative.
Donald Trump could lose control of Trump Tower if he's barred from doing business in New York. The judge has already ruled that Trump properties, like his Mar-a-Lago golf club in Florida, were fraudulently overvalued. This trial will determine the penalty.
But you're witnessing the most corrupt and blatant weaponization of law enforcement.
Campaigning as the victim of political persecution is working for now, with polls suggesting he's currently leading Joe Biden in the presidential contest. But the same surveys suggest if he's convicted for trying to overthrow the results of the last election, enough voters would switch sides to defeat him.
It's 18 minutes past 3 with SAFM. John in for Eldrin. We're keeping an eye on the cricket. Afghanistan against Australia. I'm supporting the underdogs here. Big time supporting the underdogs. Australia way ahead on the run rate, but they have lost the 2 wickets already. Keeping an eye on that. Tumi will tell us about that in about 10 minutes or so from now. Let's take a couple of your voice notes already. 086 000 2032 is the phone number. You can send us a voice note as well. 0614 104 107.
Good afternoon, John, and your team. Flores here from the Western Cape. John, this whole thing was Julius Malema and the Springbok emblem. The poor animal already is so hunted in the wild by cheetahs and lions, and now Julius is also after this poor gullible animal. However, he doesn't come up with a replacement for our Springbok on the rugby jersey. So I suggest we put a braai stand as our new national rugby emblem, because that's what we do when the boys play rugby. So yeah, I say go for a braai stand. Well, I'm not sure what your thoughts are. Have a good job. Bye-bye.
Go for what? A braai stand? Is that what he said? Did he say braai stand? I didn't quite hear what he said. Can I go back again? Let's go there. What did he say?
Well, I'm not sure what your thoughts are. I say go for a braai stand.
A braai stand? As the symbol for the Springboks?
I'm not sure what your thoughts are.
Okay.
Hello. I've been watching this tour of the Springbok around the country. I saw it when we were in KZN. I don't know who, someone should come and explain to us who is allowed to lead, to touch the Springbok Cup. Because I saw the chairperson of the ANC, Siboniso Duma, picking up the Springbok Cup. I don't know, maybe the sports person of the show told me should come and explain to us who is supposed to have the right to lift the trophy. I don't know.
That's a very good question, and I don't know if it applies to everything, but I always thought that only the winners of the trophy could lift the trophy. That was the way I understood it, but I've seen things different. What was it? The FIFA World Cup recently, where Salt Bay, the chef, was holding the trophy and kissing the trophy. We've had politicians and other members of the public holding the trophy now but it's not the real trophy that's been doing the tour, just so you know. So maybe there's a difference there, because it's a replica. South Africa has the four replicas of the William Webb Ellis Trophy in a cabinet. And it's not the real trophy that they were showing off. It's a replica, just in case it gets stolen or dropped or broken or whatever. The real one, I think, stays in wherever World Rugby is. But yeah, so I guess anybody can lift the replica. But is it in good taste that politicians and members of the public are holding up the trophy? And not what Sekolisi does, but then they hands the trophy out. I don't know the answer, but it's definitely not the real one. I've been lucky enough to see the real Premier League trophy. I was from here to just beyond arm length from the real Premier League trophy. But there were two security guards standing around it, and I wouldn't touch it, but they were like, you get the eye. English security guards looking me in the eye, like, don't go near it. Yeah, it'll be interesting. We'll see if we can find out.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 104.6 FM in Tshwane.
All right, let's go to the north of the continent, where Libya has begun the deportation process of 600 undocumented Egyptians who entered the country illegally. Egypt shares more than 1,000-kilometer-long border with Libya. Egyptian authorities have stepped up since 2016 to deal with irregular migration, setting a legislative framework to combat the smuggling of migrants. For more, let's find out with Ibrahim Dean, independent commentator and researcher. Ibrahim, the 600 doesn't seem like many. I've got figures of thousands of people that are crossing that border.
Yes, I mean, there's currently 700,000 immigrants in Libya overall. Mm-hmm. Around 140,000 are Egyptian. So, yes, the number is not a lot. And I think, a big part of Libyan immigration, or Egyptian immigration to Libya, as you said, is, Egypt is currently suffering economically, and Libya, as bad as it is, seems a bit better. Now there is smuggling rings, that takes Egyptians across the border to Libya, and Libya is one of the transit routes onto Lampedusa, Italy, and Europe, and so Libya would want to show Europe that it's doing something about the migration issue. And that's the main reason informing, the deportations. Because one is it doesn't, 600 as opposed to, of 145,000 is virtually nothing. But, it's more about the symbolic gesture. I think, significantly we do need to note that many of these immigrants, are smuggled across the border in inhumane conditions and are deported in even worse conditions, than when they were smuggled.
So is this the beginning? This trip, because it takes it's a very long distance to get into Libya, and the country doesn't have very much. It's a big open area. It's very difficult to get to Tripoli, and then I guess they want to go on to Tunis or onto Gibraltar or Rabat into Morocco and get into Europe. Is this the beginning of that trip?
So basically what would happen is you would go to Libya and go from Libya to the Maltese island of Lampedusa. You don't even need to go down to Tripoli, just go via the Mediterranean. Right. So that would be an initial step. But, in saying so, most of the people from Egypt, not necessarily from other places, most of the people from Egypt immigrating to Libya actually immigrating for economic opportunities. Mm-hmm. There's a very small amount that actually migrating to try and get to Europe. 41% of them in Egypt already unemployed. So they're immigrating for that reason. Now, when it comes to other places or other countries, such as the Nigerians, Sudanese, Nigerians, those mainly go upward to try and get to Europe. Yes, Libya is a very porous country in terms of the boundaries, and obviously there's currently two rival administrations. In terms of this being the first deportations, there has been deportations earlier this year. I think about 4,000 people have been deported so far. Most of them actually from the east. This is different because it's actually from the west that's being deported to Egypt. So it shows that, both of the rival governments in Libya want to show that they're doing something for migration to Europe, mainly to try and get funds, to try and get legitimacy. From the EU, as we've seen with the EU, they currently backing a dictator in neighboring Tunisia, mainly because they're scared of Tunisians going across to Europe.
Tell me about Libya's current economic situation. As you say, people are moving from Egypt to Libya, despite Libya not being fantastic.
Yeah, Libya's economic situation is dire. There's currently still a conflict happening between the east and the west, and every now and then it threatens to spill over. We just seen conflict within the west a few months ago, but Libya is still one of Africa's largest oil refiners. It still has much better job prospects than Egypt. So the potential in Libya is greater than the potential in Egypt, which currently has a dictator in power. Is suffering. The Egyptian pound has collapsed in the past couple of months. There's a looking at an IMF bailout. So Libya is bad, but not as bad as many other places continentally.
And then you were talking about human trafficking. How does that work?
So we're seeing, especially from going north to Libya rather than going south from Egypt.
Right.
People paying to actually get into Libya, thousands of dollars, taking very dangerous tracks. And, in Libya, we've seen a few years ago and still continuing is the issue of slavery, people getting sold, people being kept in cages. All because, many are trying to use that porous border, especially the Mediterranean Sea, to actually get to Italy. And, the situation, I think there's already almost 1,000 people that died in both, in boat crossings this year already.
Okay,
so it's a very dire situation.
So somebody's looking for a job. There's human traffickers that say, give us your passport and we'll go and find you a job. And then for the rest of their lives, they're having to pay back something.
There's that, and as I said, there's also slavery markets, which is even more worrying that happened in Libya earlier this year. There's, as I said, there's the people being trafficked and dying on sea. What's happening is, at the root of this is the fact that the Libyan government, or there is no Libyan government. And because there's no Libyan government, there's no real border security, real adherence to, or at least to human rights laws and regulations. And that means the country in many places is a free fall. And because it's so close to Italy or Malta, it's part of the trafficking and even migratory route. Unfortunately, solving this would mean trying to solve the Libyan political issue, which is proving a lot more difficult than all of us envisaged.
I'm having a look at that border. What's it, 1,000 kilometers long? It looks as if there's some kind of trench or fence that's running there, but how is it possible to police a 1,000-kilometer long border in the middle of a desert?
Yes, and that's the thing. It's a desert border. It's not even a mountainous border, the one, with Egypt. And also, we also have to remember that many of these borders were drawn up. And there's obviously tribes that are migratory already. So it's almost impossible to police such a border. The bigger issue, though, is Libya itself. There's been UN attempts to try and actually facilitate a solution to the Libyan quagmire. But, these established political actors, both from the East and the West, don't want to give up power to people. They're, highly unpopular. Politics is still controlled by who controls the militia. That's actually making the situation worse because, the situation in Libya is not improving. There's no real border controls. The borders themselves are very porous, and, the migration to Europe, though a lot less nowadays, is still quite high.
Ibrahim Dean, thank you very much. Independent coordinator and researcher. Brings us to exactly 3:30. Let's get the latest news headlines.
Thank you, John. In your headlines, NPA in
Indeed, it has been. We've got a major closure of the N1 in Pretoria. It's been a multi-vehicle pile-up, trucks and vehicles involved in this. The N1 going north closed at the N4 Emalafeni Highway. Motorists being diverted via the ramps, but it's a big queue that extends right back to Garsfontein. It would be well worth staying away from that one. The truck crash from overnight last night on the N3 north at Marlborough Drive, which happened in wet and slippery conditions as well. That is still there, so running north from the Alex side up and towards Zimbro Park, staying slow. Durban, also a lot of rain across the day, Durban and the surrounding inland areas of KZN. There is a crash on Durban's M7. It is bluff bound just down by the Belleville Road exit at Queensborough, so arriving from North Dean. That is very slow going. Cape Town, a bit of pressure out of the CBD. Today, Baton Truck towards the elevated freeway and Strand Street, leaving Baton Truck out towards High Level, looking slow. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Domin Kapele.
Timmy!
Yes.
Can Pirates win a match, please?
Only time will tell, John. Only time will tell.
Hopefully a short time. Please, come on, guys. Us happy people are not so happy anymore.
Are you a happy person?
Yeah, sometimes I'm a happy person. Lately, I've been a really, really sad person.
A very good afternoon to you. Straight to your sports, starting off with the DStv Premiership action. It returns this evening, and Golden Arrows will be looking to regain that second spot on the log when they face Royal AM tonight. Abafana Bastane have never beaten Royal AM in their 5 previous clashes. Arrows lost 3-0 to Amazulu in the culling knockout on Saturday, but in the league, they've been superb this campaign with 6 wins from their 9 games, 2 draws and 1 loss. That only defeat came at Mamelodi Sundowns, and a win for Royal AM will take them to within a point of Sundowns at the top of the table, even though they have played 2 games more. Also in action, it's Stellenbosch FC who host Richards Bay, and Orlando Pirates, who are still licking their wounds from the weekend. They welcome Skukuni United at Orlando Stadium. Hopefully they'll make John smile today. Elsewhere, in terms of the Champions League, it returns tonight. Manchester City continue their defense with a home game against Young Boys. City have won all 3 of the Champions League matches 3-1 and will be confident of gaining another 3 points against Raphael Wiki's side. Kevin De Bruyne is still out with a hamstring injury that has sidelined him since the opening weekend of the Premier League season. Erling Haaland may not be risked after being withdrawn at halftime against Bournemouth with a twisted ankle. However, he was seen training yesterday, so we'll see if he'll be able to play today or not. Then Tottenham Hotspur manager Ange Postecoglou has called for an end to the questioning of officials' decisions in order to prevent their authority being undermined. In yesterday's Premier League wildest game, Spurs had 2 players sent off in a 4-1 defeat at home to Chelsea, the first loss of the Premier League season. There were 9 VAR checks in one half. 5 goals between the 2 clubs were disallowed, and the first half had 12 minutes added, in which they ended up playing 23 minutes extra. But Postecoglou refused to criticize referee Michael Oliver.
Managers should just manage their football clubs. I've never, and I never will, talk to a referee about the rules of the game. I was taught that you grow up and you respect the officials. You know what managers do? I'll tell you what managers do, me included. We try and find ways to bend the rules, to get around them. Tell me what the rule is, and I guarantee you'll have a room full of managers processing how can I get around this. we're not the right people. And I get that people keep saying that. I don't agree with it. What I want is the best officials, always been upskilled to officiate the game. But I think it's so hard for a referee to officiate these days. Their authority is just constantly getting diminished.
In cricket, Bangladesh captain Shakib Al Hassan has been ruled out of his side's last World Cup match because of a left index finger injury. He will fly back to Dakar today, and Bangladesh, who are already out of contention for a semi-final place, conclude their group stage campaign against Australia on Saturday. Meanwhile, Angelo Matthews says that his dismissal before even facing a ball was not just about interpretation of the rules, but about a player's safety as well. Matthews was sent packing without having faced a single ball after timing out as he tried to fix his helmet.
I have 2 minutes to get to the crease and get myself ready, which I did. And then it was a equipment malfunction. And I don't know where the common sense went, because obviously it's disgraceful from Shakib and Bangladesh if they want to play cricket like that. Obviously stoop down to that level. I think there's something wrong drastically. Because, if I got past my 2 minutes to get to the crease, and in the law says you have to be ready within the 2 minutes, and I was there 2 minutes 45 or 50 seconds. I still had, after my helmet broke off, I still had 5 more seconds to go. And the umpires also have said to our coaches that they didn't see my helmet breaking. I mean, I was just asking for my helmet there.
In terms of the action that is happening right now at the Cricket World Cup, Afghanistan posted 291 for 5 in their clash against Australia. Ibrahim Sadran top scored with an unbeaten 129. Josh Hazelwood had the best bowling figures of 2 for 39. And Australia currently are sitting on 49 for 4 after 8 overs. So things are not going well for Australia. Ending things off with rugby action, Springbok lock Archia Snyman will undergo surgery for a chest injury. His club Irish outfit Munster have confirmed. Now, Snyman sustained the injury in the Box World Cup final against New Zealand. The 27-year-old spent 2 years on the sidelines with successive knee ligament injuries before returning in March. He then formed an integral part of the Box victorious campaign in France. With that said, it's a wrap from my side. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumen Kapele.
#SAFMBTH.
Hallo Michelle, hope you're well. You know, Mos, I'm not very lucky for online internet shopping things after Uncle Donnie got a second loan on his house to pay for some escort in Portugal's child to go to university. But listen, I'm addicted to this We Buy Cars auctions. Every day you can buy cars. My finger is jikkerig on the smells. I'm going to click anytime now because I want a fancy fast car. But my husband is making me so moeg. I'm sommer listen auction him. I nogal wonder how
The cricket on the go. Australia against Afghanistan. Afghanistan are almost playing by committee at the moment. There's 5 or 6 players that'll gather together and set the field. And there was just a referral for an obvious, I mean, it wasn't even close to an LBW, but 10 of them gathered around and demanded that it would be referred. It wasn't even close. But yeah, Australia 49 for 4, chasing just 292 to beat the mighty Afghanistan. I'm supporting the underdogs in this one. We'll take some calls and voice notes. Before we go to our next guest, we're going to get an update on what is happening with Dr. Nandipa Magudumana. Her bail appeal was dismissed today. We will find out what that appeal was about and why it was dismissed. And then this micro and mini nuclear reactor that is planned in the Western Cape. There are, how many of them? Well, 4 of them will be put together to create 320 megawatts. Similar reactors in a 1,800 megawatt network is planned for construction over the long term. So it'll be an interesting story, but there are already people that think this is not a good idea, and we will talk to those people first. The executive director of the South African Faith Communities Environmental Institute. We will see why they disagree with mini reactors. Difference between micro, mini, and I guess the big reactors, like Kuba currently has, 2 reactors. Those would be normal reactors, and we'll see what the difference is there. So stay close. Welcome to the show. Let's go to a couple of voice notes now on 0614 104 107.
Good afternoon, John. John, I'm a very worried citizen of this country. Nobody is safe in this country. The criminals are running amok. Now we are hearing of a minister being robbed with his VIP protectors. The president the other day's farm was robbed. Fire businesses are robbed. Individuals are robbed. Everybody is robbed in South Africa. Why are we letting this country go down like this, man? What is happening? Gee, this country is going down the drain, guys. Wake up, police, politicians, wake up. Thank you.
My biggest worry about that transport minister being robbed, allegedly they were changing a tire when they were robbed. My question is, there were VIP security there that we spend millions, maybe it's also billions of rand, for these VIP security officers to look after our ministers, and they obviously didn't do their job. They were relieved of their firearms, I think is some of the wording that I saw. So here's these people, their sole job is to look after this one asset, and maybe they did. They did look after it because, thank goodness nothing really, really bad happened. But isn't that their job, is to stop people from being robbed? That's the worrying thing about that. Let's move on. Let's go to our courts.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
Let's go to the High Court in Bloemfontein, where they have dismissed Dr. Nandipa Magudumana's bail appeal application. Talk to news reporter Aphumelela Mdlalane, who's covering that story. Aphumelela, good afternoon to you. First of all, let's go back a bit. Applying for bail after being arrested in, Tanzania?
Afternoon, and also to the listeners. Dr. Nandipa Magudumana's judgment today was based on her bail application. You must remember that she tried to attempt and failed at the magistrate court, and now she approached to the High Court in a bid to overturn the judgment. You must remember there's also another case that is sitting where after she petitioned the Supreme Court of Appeal to have her arrest in Tanzania and also had been kept in Bizamakate be overturned. But today we saw the acting judge, Jordan, coming to the same judgment of verdict as Magistrate Esther Lange, where she also touched on the importance of complying with the conditions of bail, of being released on bail, where she touched on the issue that Dr. Nandipa Magudumana, first of all, she's a flight risk because she was found in possession of many passports, including hers that was not stamped when she was arrested in Tanzania. And also said that there was no dishonesty when she mentioned that she was rather forced by Thabo Bester to go with him to Tanzania and she was intimidated by Thabo Bester. But now the question was, if that's the case, then why did she question the authorities, the SAPS, when they were arresting her and bringing her back to South Africa? So there were just those issues that the judge tried to deal with, and also saying that there was no substantive evidence from her side to say that magistrate court had misdirections when they said that she's not supposed to be out on bail. Again, another issue that was touched is that during her evidence, the state did reveal that her not having a permanent physical address remains a problem, because they found that she would stay in this apartment. After 2 months, she moved to another one. So there is no permanent address that was confirmed, of which that is very important for someone who's applying for bail. And the issue of her being linked to the bodies that were claimed in the hospital in Bloemfontein. And also, the outcome was that if she did it before, as the evidence now claims that she's responsible for the escape of Thabo Bester, then she can always do it again. And the bail denial was based on those conditions.
I think an important statement from Judge Melissa Judan that she was the main role player in the escape of Thabo Bester from the Mangaung Correctional Centre. That's quite scathing.
Indeed, that's when she mentioned that, and also the body that she used and pretended not to even have a relationship or knowing of the body of Katleho Bereng that was used in aiding in making the escape of Thabo Bester. And so what the judge said was that she has a strong connection, and also the information or the evidence that she was responsible in terms of many payments, including the millions that were paid to accused number one, Steve Nohematwara.
Mpumelelo, so is this over for her, or is there more space for her to take this to higher courts?
Talking to the legal expert, particularly, she has mentioned that Dr. Makutumana still has a legal standing. She can petition the Supreme Court of Appeal to hear her wanting to, of course, be released on bail. But the chances of her being released on bail are very slim, given the conditions that she does not comply with. And if this happens, that would mean the Supreme Court of Appeal will only hear her case after the recess. That would be next year. And that means now Dr. Nandipha Makutumana has a high likelihood that she will spend Christmas at the Biza Makate prison in Kroonstad.
SABC News reporter Mpumelelo Mdlalane, thank you very much.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Good afternoon, John. I hope you're well, and as a FM listeners. In that issue of rugby trophy that was grabbed by this guy, what you call him, Sponiso Duma, instead of Nomsato Benube. In the case that is a culture, that thing. It's a culture. You could remember that while Senzo Mkhono was a premier, Sihlezi Galala go and sit on his chair for premier. And you might also remember that on the Prince Mangosuthu funeral, Sponiso Duma was for front day. He was also speaking while the funeral was understated. It was supposed to be a parliament members who were talking there, but he put himself there. Yeah, I thank you. Nathan Bada from Mkambate, Kempton Park at the moment.
Good afternoon, SFM. Listen, with the SA emblem story with Springboks and Mayo, young people don't care about what it was associated with in the past. They don't. To them and to people in their 20s, it signifies pride. It signifies unity. the Springbok emblem. New South Africa. I think they should keep it. Why? Why are we going to change it? Anonymous from Durban.
Dumela John, just out of curiosity, why is Nandi Pamagudumana still being referred to as a doctor? That lady did heinous things in her profession as a doctor. What is the medical profession saying about this? Can't they strip her of her medical license and we should stop honoring her with the doctor title? I don't know, I'm just asking out of curiosity. Nhlanhla here, proud grade R practitioner from the Vaal.
Yeah, those are some of your views. I'm not sure I agree with that symbol one. Is it not our job to explain to the young people what the symbols mean? A famous radio announcer once said when name changes were coming across South Africa about how you forget who the struggle heroes were because the kids will just remember the name. Like, unless somebody explains to you who, I live out west, Hendrik Verwoerd is. Unless somebody explains to you who Hendrik Verwoerd is just the drive. It's just Hendrik Verwoerd drive that goes out west towards Krugersdorp. Unless somebody explains to you who Hendrik Verwoerd is, you've got to keep that memory alive. So now with the Springbok, it has a history. And the young kids of today see, if you're 20 years old, you are celebrating, what are we now, 8 years or 4 years of Springbok excellence. That's what you relate the Springbok to. If you're a 10-year-old now, that's what you get. But there are people on this country, on this earth right now who are listening to this radio show that will hate the Springbok for what it stands for. And it's their job to remind, we need to be reminded of that history. Or do you just ignore that history and go, well, forget it. Right now, the Springbok is fantastic. And let's forget about the old Springbok. Let's forget about the dark days. Or you can't do that. You have to remember. We can't learn from history if we just forget about it. Should the Springboks be called the Proteas? I'm going to leave that for you to decide and for you to debate. Let's see what you think about it, if you want to bring it up. Otherwise, there's plenty of topics to talk about.
You are listening to Jon Gericke on SAFM.
Okay, Francesca de Gasparis from the South African Faith Communities Environmental Institute reacts to the news that the Western Cape will soon receive mini nuclear reactors. According to her, South Africa doesn't need new speculative and expensive technology, which has already cost the country billions. Mini nuclear reactor technology has been in development for multiple decades, currently being researched and planned for rollout by several companies in the US. Francesca joins us now. Francesca, thanks very much. First of all, what is a mini nuclear reactor?
Afternoon. I hope you're well.
Always.
Well, it's yet another way to try and tell us unnecessary and expensive nuclear energy. They're nothing new. It's been something that South Africa has been looking at from the early 2000s. You've heard of them as pebble bed nuclear reactors. They're basically a small nuclear reactor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the most important takeaways that anyone should take when we talk about energy systems like nuclear and others is how much is it going to cost? How much is it going to cost us? And mini nuclear reactors are even more expensive than the full-sized ones. And I think that's the main thing we should be talking about at this point.
I've got it $9 billion, a consortium, a private consortium, Andre Pina's C5 Capital, want to raise the money to do this. So reading that is not going to cost me anything.
Well, that's where the devil is in the detail, unfortunately. How is the finance going to be repaid? It's often repaid. If you look at Eskom, how do they recoup their poor management of our energy fleet? Through our ever-increasing electricity prices. So the reason our electricity goes up by more than 10% every year, oftentimes double inflation, is because of poor energy decision-making by our government and then not maintaining the energy fleet, which results in us having increased electricity prices. So that's very nice that they're going to try and raise the finance, but bear in mind that the chairman of the Southern African Development Bank, Mark Swilling, has said publicly that there is no bank that he knows of that will finance nuclear energy. So I think that Mark is probably pretty much in the know on this issue.
Okay, nuclear costs a lot to build, but once it is built, it is very, very cheap.
Well, it depends on what costs you externalize. So if you look at nuclear waste is radioactive, so it's much more toxic than any other forms of waste that we have, even things like coal. And toxic nuclear active waste can take tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of years to break down and to become safe again. So if you want to push these huge costs of storing and looking after toxic waste onto future generations, then without really recognizing the cost of it, then yes, it is cheaper. If you don't look at the true cost of nuclear in terms of decommissioning it, yes, it's cheaper. But if we look at the true cost of nuclear, you'll see it's not actually that much cheaper.
Okay, obviously, yeah, so all of those costs have to be
In fact,
accounted.
it's more expensive, sorry.
Yeah.
What I should have said.
The more research you do, the more it becomes, because you have to add all those costs into the price at what you're selling the electricity to make. Yeah. So even decommissioning it in 50 years' time has to be accounted into the cost.
Yes. I mean, and unfortunately it's become a way of how we do things these days. We want, sort of everything cheap right now, but, the cost is going to be incurred. There aren't shortcuts in our energy crisis. We need to invest in energy systems that are going to be affordable and accessible. And it's absolutely clear that that's renewable energy. All the modeling says so.
Okay, let's talk about that, right? We keep hearing about a base load. I've got solar on my roof. Today I've made zero electricity from my solar. So how do you get a base load from wind and solar panels in the Northern Cape and out of the sea?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest myths that we hear that needs to be debunked, this idea of base load, and that it has to come from something, that we have to have nuclear energy for base load. We don't need that. Our energy system is made up of different forms of energy that gets turned into electricity. Someone explained to me like Lego building blocks. How the Legos fit together and how they combine is what we do to make sure we have a constant electricity supply. There is no such thing that needs to be on all the time, because you can store energy in lots of different ways. So we're no longer sitting in a scenario where you have to have nuclear energy constantly on so that we can constantly have electricity. That's adding two things together and getting the wrong answer.
All right, so when you look at this price, what are we looking at? 9 billion rand, right? Would we have to build new dams? Is 9 billion rands worth of solar and wind going to be able to cover what that nuclear reactor can do?
Absolutely. I mean, as I said, as you quoted me at the beginning, you said I said you've got to. If you look at the article, you'll say it could. They've been speculating around these small nuclear reactors for decades now. There was a big court case in South Africa because tens of billions was spent on the pebble bed nuclear reactors, and the government was not able to proceed because it's not an affordable energy system that we need. There's certain vested interests that think that this is the way forward, but we want to continue to look at the evidence and continue to look at the numbers and continue to look at what is it that the decision making that South Africa should have. We keep seeing things like car power ships coming up. We don't need car power ships. And unfortunately, it's left to civil society to keep bringing this to the government's attention rather than us seeing good energy decision-making from government.
Just quickly, from an environmental point of view, and again, let's look at the holistic picture as you have done for the cost of the nuclear reactors. Which is more environmentally friendly? Creating solar panels and all the things that go with it, getting blades up onto wind farms, or a pebble bed nuclear reactor?
Definitely, by far, over and above, the most affordable, the safest, the least environmentally destructive. Because let's not say any of this is truly, absolutely environmentally friendly. They all have their costs and drawbacks. But the least harm and least cost option is absolutely renewable. And that's not me that says that. That's what, the independent science is telling us, the researchers and everyone, both on the finance side. By far, renewable energy is above and beyond cheaper. And on the speed, the technology, renewable has its hands down. So, I mean, it's absolutely, and in our country, it's almost an absolute no-brainer. We're decades behind on solar. We could have been far and away beyond this. But unfortunately, we keep getting into these ideological conversations. It's kind of like in the US where people still haven't figured out that climate change is real. You know, we in South Africa need to get over our energy fixation on energy systems that we don't need anymore. We need to move on and embrace the opportunities that we've got, see the opportunities that we have, and really realize our development potential. I mean, we could be an absolute powerhouse, literally, if we just got ourselves over this hump. And
Right.
I think it's a human condition that we get stuck on things and we cannot move on to the opportunity and see it for what it's worth. So, I mean, I spent a long time looking at nuclear energy, and I can absolutely tell you I'm not anti-nuclear, but when you look at the facts and you look at the evidence and you don't have a vested interest in it, and you listen to all the independent science, you will see that it's not necessary, and neither does the Western Cape need to go down that road.
Right, we're going to leave it there. Francesca de Gasparis, thank you very much for joining us. Executive Director at the South African Faith Communities Environmental Institute, brings us to just after 4 o'clock.
Independent and impartial.
Closure of the N1 in Pretoria going north up towards the N4 Emalafeni highway split. It's a massive multi-truck and multi-vehicle pile-up that happened in delay at this hour. The N3 north in Joburg still slow between Alex and Limbo Park into this morning's truck crash, which is still busy being recovered. If you're driving from Durban to Pietermaritzburg either direction, there are breakdowns. A broken down vehicle at Camperdown going to Pietermaritzburg, a broken down vehicle at Cato Ridge going to Durban. It's heavy both directions there. Also, a crash on Fields Hill, the M13 from Kloof into Pinetown being held up by that seat. And Cape Town today, a little bit of pressure out of the CBD. If you're moving towards Greenpoint and Sea Point, you're going to sit on Strand Street out as far as Ocean View Drive and High Level Road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you. Beyond the Headline on SAFM. Weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Somewhere between 104 and 107 on your FM dial. If you're listening to us on the streaming, there's new things happening on the streaming as well. Find out more. safm.co.za is the website. We're open on Twitters. We're open on Facebook. It's wide open conversation for you. And we'll take calls and WhatsApp voice notes later on, because this hour, we're busy. Speaking to the South African Transport and Allied Workers Union in a moment. Then we're going to find out about what's happening to nurses in Zimbabwe. They've want to leave the country and they've migrated to other places around the world, but they haven't got documents confirming that they are nurses, their professional status, which they can't take up the jobs overseas. So they've applied, they've got the job, they can't go until they get the certificates, and the certificates aren't coming, or verification letters. So the Nurses Council of Zimbabwe is failing there. We'll find out from a trade union of nurses in Zimbabwe what's happening there. Then we will bring you an update. Where's my next piece of paper? There we go. We got some investment news for you coming up at 4:45, a little bit of help. I know there's some scandals around some investment company in South Africa. And then apparently we have space for a new grant. That's right. The SA Law Reform Commission has recommended the introduction of a maternity support grant that will seek to help pregnant women and new mothers. Well, they need the help, but does South Africa have the money? We're told all the time there is no money. When unions go on strike, there's no money to give you an increase. You can't get an increase. Now the SA Law Reform Commission has said that 3 billion rand a year needs to be found for a new grant. We will talk to Isabel Fry, Executive Director of Social Policy Initiative, after 5 o'clock today, and see where the money will come from and why that grant is needed. So all of that's coming up.
#SAFMBTH.
All right, let's start with what's happening down in Cape Town. Talk that the city of Cape Town's port should come under the custodianship, or should be privatized, or at least parts of it. We're going to hear from Sitawu in a minute. We were hoping to speak to the Western Cape government, but they weren't available. They did send us a voice note, though. Muriel Wenger is the MEC of Transport in the Western Cape and sent us this.
We are heading into an export crisis in the Western Cape at the end of the year. With the good rains we've experienced, our agricultural goods for export are anticipated to increase by about 25%. And this is a wonderful opportunity to increase exports and to bring in more revenue. However, there's been a significant deterioration at the Port of Cape Town, particularly when it comes to critical equipment, and it means that the Port of Cape Town is not and will not be able to keep up with the volume of goods coming in and get them to market on time. Our research shows that if we can increase Western Cape exports by 10%, our GDP will grow by just under 1%. But to achieve this growth in exports, we need the port to be our economic partner and for it to be running efficiently with adequate investment in infrastructure, including vital equipment. This is why it's absolutely critical that the private sector is brought in to boost the efficiency of the Port of Cape Town so that we can work together to achieve the kind of breakout economic growth we need to create thousands of new jobs in the province and in South Africa.
That's Mariel Wenger, MEC for Transport in the Western Cape. But SATAWU, South African Transport and Allied Workers Union, concerned about those comments, calling for the provincial government to stop interfering in the operations of Transnet. Let's find out why. Member of SATAWU, speaking on behalf of SATAWU on this matter, is Amanda Chemesi. Amanda, thank you very much. It sounds like this is a win-win. It would be more jobs, it would be more exports, it would be better for the economy. Why are you against it?
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and a very good afternoon to you too and to your listeners at home. Well, I think I need to start by saying that the union condemns the article written by the Minister of Finance in the Western Cape. In fact, that article clearly indicates that the Western Cape provincial government has no interest in growing the economy of the country and creating jobs, especially for young people. Those comments are made by the MEC are very reckless and insensitive. They do not care about South Africans. They're selfish and they are thinking about themselves. And I think it is very important to highlight that the MEC is not telling the truth when she's saying that the entity or the Port of Cape Town cannot sustain itself or it does not have equipment. Those claims, they are not true and they are fabricated. They need to stop misleading the country. And I think the DA-led government, they have high rate of unemployment in the Western Cape, for an example. And you have a provincial MC that suggests an entity like Transnet to be privatized. First of all, we all know that when you are talking about privatization, you are talking about retrenchment. Already this country is fighting high rate of unemployment, poverty, and crime. And I think the Western Cape provincial government should focus on service delivery and stop interfering on the businesses of Transnet, because we as the town we've been having meetings with the management and the Minister of Public Enterprises, Minister Pravin Gordhan, in trying to find ways to rebuild, to rescue, and to secure jobs for our people in the country.
Okay, what about the independent research? Stellenbosch University professor has done research and says that the underperformance of Transnet's ports jumped by 40%. Indirect cost almost doubled over that period to 35 billion rand. 35 billion rand that is because of Transnet's underperformance, which you say isn't there.
Look, if I could just remind you, if you remember very well, sometime last year, when we had salary negotiations with the entity, and as a result, we ended up going on strike. The management of that entity, they revealed to us that they have made a profit of over 5 billion rand in the 2021-2022 financial year. So to us, it really doesn't make sense that in the past financial year, you were able to make a profit of 5 billion rand, but when it's time for you to serve your own interests, you are disputing all of that.
That's two different things. Hold on. That's two different things. I can make a profit of 5 billion rand, which is great, but if I could make 45 billion rand because of the lack of infrastructure, the lack of because of the underperformance, so they could make even more money. Amanda?
Hi, I'm still here. I'm so sorry. I could not hear you properly. You were breaking at some point.
I'm going to say it again, right? So they made a profit. That's great. But they could have made 35 billion rand more and made even more profits and get more workers and increase the size of their ports.
You'd understand that for the past 2 years, just post COVID-19, you'd remember that the entity has been trying to refurbish and to rebuild this entity as a result of cable theft and vandalism, and also considering the fact that we have been very vocal against the maladministration and corruption that is said to be taking place at this entity. However, I do want to say that the money that has been made there, it is a huge money. It is enough
for the entity to sustain itself for the upcoming years. And we are against the management or anyone who even suggests that we should be letting go of the entity. That's where we are as a union, because we do know that it is going to affect the workers, the poor and the working class. People are going to lose their jobs. As we speak, if you remember, a few weeks back, we were having engagements and fighting with the Minister of Public Enterprises because they were selling the Port of Durban. So there's nothing is going to change, even right now. It's the same as that one of Durban. In Durban, we are likely to see thousands of our members and workers losing their jobs because now there is a new partnership. And we all know that the private sector, they do not care about jobs or securing jobs. The only thing that they care about is making profit of billions of rands in this country.
So you are willing to sacrifice money coming into the country and taxes and profits and money going out of the country as well for jobs. That's where your stand is right now. You are happy that we don't make 35 billion rand extra every year let me finish the question. As long as the jobs are secure.
I think I need to correct you. Please do not put words in my mouth.
That's why I'm asking the question.
I didn't say we are happy as a union. What I'm saying is the entity as we stand, it is making money, and we believe that if the entity can go back to what it used to be, if we can have the right people in those positions, we can double the amount that you are talking about. And we can also secure jobs at the same time. The amount that you're talking about, we can make it if only we work together as the management, and only if we do not allow politicians to interfere.
Okay, so politicians mustn't interfere and private sector mustn't interfere. Who's going to fix Transnet?
Government should take charge of that, and the minister in particular.
Those are politicians. Okay, I want to understand, Grindrod and Bidvest currently have specialist freight terminals at ports. Richards Bay Coal Terminal is also private. Do you have members that are working there, and are those terminals successful?
Yes, we do have members that are working that side, and as you would know, yes, things have not been going so well. However, we are picking up, and the business is starting to pick up again.
You understand that Transnet is the biggest contributor to the economy, also creating jobs. It's a fine balance between the two. But if you stop making money, jobs stop being created. Where do you stand in that line between making money and creating jobs and losing money and losing jobs?
The union is very clear. We maintain we are against anything that seeks to undermine the workers of this country. As I said, as the union, we are fighting to secure jobs of our members and workers and South Africans generally. So to answer your question, we can never ever support any suggestion or anything that is said to privatize any entity, be it TRASA, be it Transnet, be it Eskom. If it seeks to undermine the workers, if it can lead us to retrenchment, the union can never ever support anything like that. And it is not true that we prefer or we would rather lose money as long as we have jobs. That is not true. The business is going on very well at these entities.
It's not going on well. That's the point.
It is. And as I'm saying, we are still trying to rebuild because of the damage that was done in the previous year and in the past. Right now.
But just because it's the DA.
Hi, John. This is Jean-Pierre Murray Klein from the Western Cape. I think you're correct that we need to learn from the past, but the lesson here might be that that symbol might not be something the current generation does despise. A symbol can mean different things to different people and different generations. It can be good, it can be bad at the same time. That might be the lesson here. We can move from bad to good. And the Springbok could, in fact, be a very good example of that. It is a sign that we are transitioning.
I like that. That's, yeah, instead of changing for change's sake, improve for change's sake. I like that one.
John, how are you? It's John Mlumfonte. You know what? This thing of Julius Malema, I don't think we should give it the attention he wants us to give it. You understand? Let's not even talk about it. It's not something we should worry about. I'm not now all of a sudden going to start hating the Springboks when these people have brought so much joy in our lives, when so much is going wrong in our country. These guys are fighting for the country, and Julius just comes and spews nonsense every time he speaks. No. Let's not do that. Please end this debate now. Let's not discuss Julius and his innuendos about the Springboks and changing names and all of that. No. He wants us to do that, exactly. Actually. He wants us to talk about him, about what he said about the Springboks. Let's not do that, please, John. Let's continue celebrating the Springboks, and we will not change the name because of that boy from Limpopo. Please.
It's 4:30. Time for news headlines. Let's see what's happening in the news. We've got sport and traffic.
Yes.
I've decided I'm going to have to lose weight because I'm old and fat. And I've decided I'm going to lose weight.
Okay.
And I thought I'm going to go for a run.
Yeah.
So far, I've thought about going for a run.
And how many kilometers?
No, I've thought about it.
You've thought about it?
Yeah. So
when are you going to do it?
I don't know. I was thinking of like 2025.
In the next 2 years?
Operation 2025.
Probably it's 2025 December, huh?
Yeah. Which will be postponed. Okay. Wait, we've got to make this stop. Sorry, we got noise happening there. Okay, but you've got Real Runners news.
Yeah, there's Real Runners news in your sports this hour. Comrades Marathon Association chairperson Gondi Zingobo has unveiled next year's campaign slogan for the 2024 Comrades Marathon. No doubt, Nakanjani, in interference to the Comrades athletes' firm belief in the power, stature, and attraction of the world's biggest and oldest and most loved ultra marathon. The 97th Comrades Marathon will be an uprun on the 9th of June 2024, starting at the Durban City Hall at 5:30 and finishing 12 hours later at the Hollywood Bet Scottsville Racecourse. As the previous upruns, the race distance will be approximately 87 kilometers, and this will be be the 49th Comrades Uprun, and the entries opened this morning, and it will close at 4:30 on the 11th of December, or once the entry cap of 23,000 have reached, whichever comes first. So if you're going to register for the Comrades Marathon, make sure you register soon. Then in football, Kukune United will look to put behind the current disruptions within their camp to bounce back against Orlando Pirates tonight. Their defeat to TS Galaxy in the Carling Knockout Cup at the weekend has all but decided the future of coach Brendan Tritter, with assistant coach Morgan Gold and goalkeeper coach Johan Abelson sacked a few days prior. Pirates have won the previous two fixtures between the two sides, but defender and captain Daniel Cardoso doesn't want a repeat.
I heard him say earlier that Pirates have the better of us, but last season they didn't beat us. They only beat us now in the M10-8, you know. And like Coach said, it sticks in our head, obviously, 5-0. It's going to stick in our heads, but we've got to get over that. We're all men, we're not little boys. It comes to the day, and we've got to show up.
After 10 league matches, Babina Noko have only managed 3 wins, losing 5 times and drawing the rest. And according to SABC Sport, Truta is currently negotiating his settlement to leave the club. But in the meantime, Cardoso remains confident that the players can turn things around.
We know we're going through a bit of a slump, but if we can score and our final third gets a bit better, games will change. I mean, there's been so many games where we miss 3, 4, 5 opportunities. They score one and we drop our heads. And I think once that changes and once we start scoring goals, it will be better for us as a team.
In golf, Tristan Lawrence has confirmed that he will defend his Investec South African Open title as he returns to the Blair Athol Golf and Equestrian Estate from the 30th of November to the 3rd of December. The 2023 edition of this prestigious event aims to give all South Africans an unforgettable experience at the country's most historic tournament. Now, Lawrence will be joined by Quality Sunshine Tour and DP World Tour co-sanctioned field, already including former Investec South African Open champion Christian Bezuidenhout, Daniel van der Tonder and Brandon Stone, as well as Eric van Rooyen, amongst others. Just giving you a quick update with regards to the Cricket World Cup. Australia sitting on 91 for 6 after 18 overs.
Wait, it might be 91 for 7.
Oh, it looks like it.
Yeah, there's celebrations from the Afghanistanis. It looks as if, who's that, Stark is going to send it up to the, what is this, not the TMO, what do they call it?
They're going to go check it now. They're reviewing
third
it.
Third umpire.
Third umpire, yeah.
Third umpire. I like TMO. It makes more sense. VAR, TMO, third umpire. No, is he walking?
Is he walking?
Yeah, he's
the
walking.
Wicket. So 96 for 7.
91
for 7 after 18 overs.
No ways.
Things are looking bad for Australia.
South Africa face Afghanistan next. Hashtag just saying.
I know, and I was telling everyone, because a lot of people feel like South Africa is going to beat Afghanistan, but remember, Netherlands also beat South Africa.
Yeah, you see?
Hopefully they do well. Just by the way, South Africa faces Afghanistan on Friday. With that said, it's a wrap from my side. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumin Kapele.
Hashtag SAFMBTH.
Come closer. Over here. Man, oh man, do I have something to tell you. Huh? You know what would happen if you were
Again, got their quarterly updates. What's things looking like for the mobile operator, Makwe?
Not too bad an afternoon to you and to your listeners. The guys maintained a resilient performance in the first 9 months as inflation remained elevated across their markets, averaging 17.3%. But in Q3, inflation has started to show some signs of subsiding, and foreign exchange markets remained volatile, with the availability of forex constraints, particularly in Nigeria, still a problem. And load shedding continued to be a challenge, but in Q3 it was less. And the guys managed to increase their subscribers by 1.8% to 290 million, and it was affected by registration regulations in Ghana and Nigeria. And mobile money active users up 0.7% to 63.5 million, and that was impacted by their strategic focus shift from agent banking to wallet in Nigeria. But transaction volume and value increased by 33.9% and 57% respectively, and the group service revenue was up 9%, with voice revenue down 0.6%, but data revenue up 15% and fintech revenue up nicely 20%.
And what's happening in the markets?
Data showed the Chinese imports unexpectedly grew in October, and that was a welcome signal on domestic consumption, but exports contracted at a quicker pace than expected, and that self giving a mixed picture overall. And markets are now assessing whether the rally from last week can continue or not, as markets are now focusing on the US Fed chair speech later in the week, and they're looking for more clarity when it comes to interest rate outlook. And most speakers at the event in Hong Kong said they see financial risk everywhere, from fragile markets to international geopolitical tension, and rate cuts expectations for next year are starting to wane, and oil prices hit a fresh 2.5 months lows as mixed economic data from China offset the impact of Saudi Arabia and Russia extending output cuts. And we see Brent crude is down 2% at $83 a barrel, and gold prices fell further, hit by a rebound when it comes to the dollar and treasury yields, and that's before a string of major Fed speakers this week. And among industrial metals, John, copper fell sharply after trade data from major importer, which is China, largely missed expectations. And the yellow metal is down 0.6% at 1,966. Platinum is down 1% at 897. The Dow is down 0.1%. S&P is flat. The DAX is down 0.1%. FTSE is flat. CAC is down 0.3%. But the JC is down a whopping 2%, and we've been dragged mainly by our resources, which are down 3.7%, financials down 2%, industrial down 1.2%. The rand weakened 0.6% against the US dollar, is now at 18.40 and 22.62 to the pound and 19.64 to the euro.
Makwe Masalela, thank you very much. Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers, and we'll have more business just less than an hour from now.
Jon Gericke on SAFM. Beyond the Headline on SAFM. Weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Stay with money for a little bit. 10x Investments is once again rewarding all new investors with 6 months of zero fees if they sign up for a living annuity, retirement annuity, or preservation fund during the month of November. Limited offers designed to alleviate financial burdens and make retirement planning more accessible to all. Many retirement investors underestimate the fees on their investments and the impact that those fees will have over the longevity of their savings. Let's get more details on this investment plan. Michael Rousseau is Senior Investment Consultant at 10x. Michael, thank you very much. Let's start at the beginning, if you don't mind. What are these annuities, living annuities, retirement annuities? What are they?
Well, I mean, they're retirement investment vehicles that people use to either save for retirement or to live off of in retirement once you've saved up money.
Okay, so the earlier the better, the more you can put aside every month, the better. So what does having no fees mean?
Yeah, so a lot of investors at the moment, they all know their investments are struggling. At this very moment, markets aren't that great. So returns are really hard to come by. And what makes it really even harder is if you're paying high fees, like 2-3%.
Sure.
This is just sort of our way of just helping investors out and just helping them retain more of their fees by just saying, you know what, come over to us and we'll actually waive our fee for the first 6 months.
Okay, so that's money that could be used and will earn interest and grow a little bit over the years. That would normally go to you guys.
Yeah, well, the nice thing about 10x is, yeah, sure, you'll get the benefit of no fees for the first 6 months, but once the promotion expires, you're going to benefit still thereafter because, you know, we're quite competitive when it comes to low fees relative to the rest of the market.
What does it mean to pay no fees? Is it just better growth and better reward at the end?
Yeah, I mean, there's various reasons why people use this kind of promotion. I know a lot of people, they do it to enhance their net returns after fees, but also there's quite a few investors that, you know, want to get out of their retirement annuity or preservation funds, but unfortunately they have to pay like a high penalty fee, and that's sort of holding them back a little bit. This is one way that they can just sort of take the sting out of the penalty fee.
Yeah, I've had to do that the other day, and the tax implications hurt me a little bit, but we'll move on from that. We'll try and ignore that if we can. How do we find out more about the promotion then, Michael?
Yeah, you just go to the 10x Investments website, and on there we've made it such a nice customer journey for everybody to see all the information there. You know, you don't want to just join somebody, you know, because you're not going to get fees for the first 6 months. You want to check them out, especially when we're dealing with people's life savings. But I think once you see what we've got going on, you will actually find that the fee-free promotion is actually just the cherry on top.
I'm having a look at the website now. I just fill out a form and somebody will contact me and help me with whatever my investment wishes are.
Yeah, exactly. So those are investment consultants that are specifically designed to give you all the factual information that you require to just, you know, asking about returns, how does it work, you know, it's like a library of information for people.
Michael, when I hear about investment, I always think of somebody with millions of rand and they've got a wine cellar and they've got a nice car. What sort of barrier to entry is there to at least start investing in a retirement or a preservation fund?
Well, actually, these days the barriers are very low to start saving towards retirement. In fact, you know, if you're starting off, the best thing to do is literally just start and let the markets do the work for you. I see so many people, you know, they'll start in their 20s and, you know, they'll only have to come up with like 10, 15% of the total amount at the end, and the markets come up with the rest.
Sure.
But if you start too late, then unfortunately you're going to have to come up with now maybe 50% of the total, the end result, and then the markets only give 50%. So my answer to that would be, look, just start, and then you can go from there.
Michael Rousseau is Senior Investment Consultant at 10X Investments.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
We'll take some calls. I want to take some calls. We're taking calls sometime in the show today. Later, an hour from now, we'll take calls. But now we've got voice notes. So we will take calls. I've just been told now. There's a super producer has just told me now. You can give us a call. 086 000 2032. Kanye's keen. You're ready to take phone calls. We're going to have a multitude of people moaning about things and complimenting us and talking about investments and talking about cricket and sport and traffic and the weather. What else have we spoken about? Unions and the ports. Springboks. That was a topic that we've spoken about as well. How much longer can we talk about the Springboks? Hey? For 4 more years is the answer. There's no more Springbok action until the Rugby Championship, which is July, August, maybe August, September. Yeah, but they're all playing. They will play in their respective clubs. They'll go and play for Province. They'll go play for the Sharks. You'll see Ox playing. Bulls will get their Springboks back as well, so you can support them, rugby fans. Let's go to some voice notes. 0614 104 107.
John, how are you? It's John in Bloemfontein. You know what? This thing of Julius Malema, I don't think we should give it the attention he wants us to give it.
I think we played that one.
You understand? Let's not.
Do we play that one? Let's play this one.
Afternoon, John. Afternoon, SAFM. John, it's true that when we are growing as a people and as a country, we do go through those growing pains stages. But our government and our legislature it was a playground from the moment of state capture, with Jacob Zuma and the Gupta's playground here, playing buddy-buddy. It is becoming more of a playground with the Magudumanas and the Bestas playing in our courts. And how can the courts deliver justice to a people? How can the criminals respect the courts? Because crime has become such a legal institution and we are just a lawless country. It's sad, and I think it's something that we should look at closely. This is Nikki Way from Mangaung. Thank you.
John, hello. Good to hear your voice in the radio. It's like you rightly said, they fail to do one of the key performance areas in their job description. What they are good at is to violate and harass motorists on the road. When you don't move, they physically violate you. But the main important thing for them to do to protect the senior officials of South Africa, they fail to do that. It's a disgrace. It is a disgrace. I feel sorry for the minister because it's one of the ministers I like, not all of them, but I like her so much. I'm so sorry for her experience. But then those two bodyguards, they should be recalled. This is pity.
What I understand is they've been relieved of their duties, but so that they can recover. It must be quite traumatizing. It's traumatizing to be robbed out in the middle of nowhere and be relieved of your gun. So they have been relieved of their duties so that they can be rehabilitated. And the minister's also been given an opportunity to speak to councillors as well. Speaking of ministers, let's move on to a big late breaking news this afternoon. The Department of Home Affairs has welcomed the judgment handed down regarding the application made by the Helen Suzman Foundation and COMSA on the Zimbabwe exemption permits. The Department of Home Affairs has also issued a statement to announce that Cabinet has approved the white paper on the citizenship, immigration and refugee protection, which seeks to address the existing framework of residency and citizenship's policy for foreign nationals. Let's find out more with the man in charge. Minister of Department of Home Affairs is Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi. Minister, thank you very much for joining us. Just if you can explain what the judgment was today.
Thank you, John. No, if you remember, Helen Suzman Foundation took us to court about the Zimbabwe exemption permit, which case we lost. We appealed, and we also lost that appeal. We are now appealing to the Supreme Court of Appeal. But Suzman Foundation and COMSA came back again and applied to the court that regardless of the appeal we have handed in, that first judgment must be implemented. In other words, they were applying for enforcement regardless of the fact that we are appealing. And that's what the court dismissed.
So what is the current state of affairs for Zimbabweans in South Africa?
Sorry?
What is the current state of affairs for Zimbabweans
the
in South Africa?
State, as we saw on the newspaper, on the statement we issued, is that remember, the whole issue was that they must apply for regular visas so that we stop the ZEP. And in that regard, we also gave them two offers, which we believe are generous, John. We said those who are doing general work, who want a general work visa, under normal conditions in South African law, when you apply for a general work visa, you must go to the Department of Labor and Employment and give a proof there that that job for which the company or whoever employer want to hire you for cannot be performed by any South African. And that if the Department of Labor and Employment, if they agree with you, they will then give you a certificate. You will then come to Home Affairs. Now the offer we have given is any Zimbabwean who is on the Zimbabwean exemption permit and is employed in one way or the other. All they need to do is to prove that they've got employment and they don't have to go to the Department of Employment and Labor. In other words, we give them an exemption. And we've signed thousands and thousands of such an exemption. Once they get an exemption, they apply for that visa they want directly. And there are 17 types of visas. So that's where we are at the present moment.
17 types of working visas.
No, not working visas. That brings people into South Africa.
Oh,
we
okay.
have got tourist visa.
Sure.
We have got general work visa. We have got study visa. We have got scarce skill visa. We have got retirement visa, spousal visa, relatives visa.
I just wanted to understand. So if you have a Zimbabwe exemption permit, you have a job, I go to Home Affairs and say I'd like my visa to work in South Africa. What is the duration of that visa?
Sorry?
What is the duration of that working visa if I've converted from a ZEP to a visa?
Well, visas do expire.
Yes.
Some take 3 years, others take 5 years. They do expire and they get renewed.
Okay, but
Visas are not forever.
3 to
Any
5
type
years
of
is the
visa-
standard.
Sorry?
3 to 5 years is the standard.
It depends what type of visa it is. For instance, if you apply for a spousal visa, we know that eventually, because you are a spouse and you have got a partner here, eventually it will mature into a permanent residence visa, and quite a number of people do mature into permanent residency. And you are aware, John, permanent residency is the last step towards applying for naturalization. So it depends on what course you want to do. For instance, to follow. For instance, if you apply for a study visa, it depends what degree you are doing. We want to see the admission to the university. If you are doing medicine, we can't give you a visa for less than 6 years. If you are doing engineering or law, we can't give you a visa for less than 4 years. If you are applying for social means for an arts degree, etc., we can't give you a visa for less than 3 years.
One of the issues, Minister, is that Zimbabweans are taking jobs from locals, yet this will let those Zimbabweans who are here in a ZEP and are working keep those jobs. Is that correct?
Sorry?
Let's try and put it another way. One of the issues that we have in South Africa at the moment is South Africans are unhappy that foreigners are coming and taking local jobs. Yet here's a case where somebody who is working on a ZEP can keep those jobs and get a visa to keep those jobs. Is that correct?
Well, if after application we allow them, all I did is to give them an exemption that don't go to the Department of Labor. But if after applying, for instance, those who have got scarce skill, if they apply for a scarce skill visa, it's not my choice, John. The scarce skills are gazetted every 4 years,
right,
except that recently we agreed that we gazette them as required. Once we gazette a scarce skill and you appear there, and an employer offers you a job, and you produce a scarce skill, what you call a certificate in that area of scarce skill, we've got no option but to give you a scarce skill visa. It's not our choice. It's done by the laws of the country.
Okay, I don't think scarce skills are the issues. I think it's the people that are working at restaurants and waiters and unskilled labor. That's the problem.
Well, as I said, we gave them, we are giving them a latitude not to go to the Department of Labor. That already is a very big concession, John. Very big.
Well,
Because
it's a
ordinarily
concession.
any
It's a concession for the Zimbabweans. My issue is that the locals have a problem with that.
We are trying to correct something that went wrong here. In the first place, the whole concept of giving Zimbabwe an exemption permit is problematic itself, John, and you will understand the era at which it was done, 2008. Economy was collapsing, and people just came here illegally, and they overwhelmed the whole system of and immigration in South Africa. So it was sort of an emergency stopgap measure, and we are trying to correct. And obviously, when you correct it, there won't be any perfection.
One of the issues the Helen Suzman Foundation raised up was the capacity of Home Affairs to be able to handle all of these applications and the visas. Has that been improved? Do you have the capacity to do that?
Well, we have hired extra people to deal with visas. For instance, early this year, we hired 9 extra lawyers who are helping with permanent residence visas after discovering that Home Affairs officials are struggling because you need some form of legal understanding, because some of the visas to issue them, you have got to understand the Constitution, You must understand international conventions. You must interpret statutes of South African statutes. Sometimes it's difficult for somebody who's not legally trained. So we hired 9 extra lawyers. But you also remember, out of the President Investment Summit, a lot of agreements were made through the Investment Summit, whereby the former Director General in Home Affairs, Mr. Mabuso Msimang, was given a job under Vulindlela to re-look at the visas. And he has made recommendations which we are implementing. Like the recommendation is like things like this requirement is no longer needed, that is no longer necessary, you no longer have to bring this. But more than anything else, we have given employers the power. We have got what we call a trusted employer scheme, whereby when a person applies for visa, it's not us who must go and get all these documents, for instance, about qualifications, about where you work. The employer themselves must go and collect them and bring them here to us, and we give them the visa. If the employer is unable to do that, then it's their problem, it's not theirs. But if the employer gives us false information, then we take that scheme away. That's why it's called a trusted employer. Right. So it puts the power of the efficiency of bringing somebody in the country in the hands of the employer, not the Department of Home Affairs.
Minister, I've got to go to news, but we've got a couple of messages that have just come through saying that people have applied last year and are still waiting for a response. Is that regular, and should they go and do something about it?
They've applied for what?
I've applied for a visa on the 4th of April. This one person says 8 months to date, they haven't got a response.
Well, obviously, there will be individuals who have got individual peculiarities. I prefer that we take their names, John.
Yeah.
And, please take their names and let's follow. And it all depends. If you apply for a permanent residence visa, it is true that it's going to take 8 months because it's not something that we easily give. Because, as I told you, permanent residency is a step towards citizenship of South Africa. So it does take time. But whoever is complaining, let them give us the details of that person who will follow it up.
All right, Dr. Aaron Matsoledi, thank you very much. Minister at the Department of Home Affairs. It's 2 minutes past 5. Time for Luyanda to give us the news.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Stories. Transport Minister robbed on the N3 and SABC to spend billions on new corporate plan. Good afternoon. With the news, I'm Dinamo Taung. Transport Minister Cindy Chikunga, together with police officers accompanying her, have been
on SAFM. Beyond the Headline on SAFM. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Jon Gericke in for Aldrin. Welcome to Beyond the Headline. If you've just joined us now, you've missed a lot. It's been a busy show, this show. We've spoken about Senzo Mayiwa. We got our update there. We spoke about mini nuclear reactors that aren't necessary in South Africa, according to an NGO. Then there was the privatization of the ports. Satawu saying that it's a bad idea and that the Western Cape must stay out of transport. Department of Transport in the province say the management of the port is stifling the economic targets set for 2023. We heard from Satawu saying that that's a bad idea. We also heard from the minister, the MEC of Transport in the Western Cape, saying it's a good idea. There are already examples of privatization in some ports, and they are doing well. And I understand reading Andre de Ruyter's book. I'm doing a really slow read of Andre de Ruyter's book. It's a little dry. And I know that he's moved on from there. I like taking it on holiday with me, and I've been on a few holidays. But the one thing he did raise as a worry was that Eskom has this double issue. They've got to have jobs, and all SEOs are like that. You've got to create jobs. You need to have job creation, but you also need to make money. So what happens in private companies is they go, well, money first, people second, and they will retrench people to be able to make the profit. Whereas SOEs, part of their mandate is to make the jobs, which is why you see Satawu loving the fact that the ports are there and the ports are creating jobs. So, yeah, a double-edged sword that has to be balanced. And how many? That's a mixed analogy, mixed metaphors, but you know what I mean, hopefully. Coming up in this hour, there is a new recommendation a recommendation for a new social grant. 3 billion rand a year is going to have to be found or has been found for pregnant women and new mothers. Sounds like a great initiative, but where's the money coming from? Also, outside in Johannesburg, it's been raining most of the day today. There are severe weather conditions, as we heard. There's been the floods, and the Western Cape has been flooded. The dams are all full, but apparently that's a good thing. El Nino is working to our positive for a change, and we look like we have a bumper crop coming up in 23-24. We will talk to the chief economist at the Agricultural Business Chamber of South Africa. First of all, though, some voice notes, as always, and we'll take your calls later on as well. But first, some voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Afternoon, John. How are you? It's David here in Gqeberha. I think it's time where we need to tell Malema that he must focus on one thing at a time, because now he can't be everywhere, this guy. Now he's talking about Springbok. Now tomorrow he's talking about he wants to talk about everything. We want to see him focusing on one thing and fix it, so that we see he really means fixing this country. Now he hasn't been talking about Springbok all of this time. Now he's mentioning Springbok just because there is a World Cup and stuff. So this guy must focus on one thing. He mustn't just jump from one thing to another without fixing.
Good afternoon, John. John, sometimes we need to be objective about certain things. And there are political parties that are very divisive. You know, it doesn't matter how you look at it. They've got ends in their head. They've got automatic negative thinking syndrome. And there's nothing that we can do. We have history, and having history in South Africa, we need to make a reference to our history that we come from this and we achieved this, and this is where we at. And Springbok is a typical example of that, of where it is coming from and where it is and what it has achieved, both in the field and off the field. So we need to do that. So we cannot say, we cannot move because there is history. History makes us who we are. That's why we're here. And we need to embrace that history and move on. Thank you so much.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
South African Law Reform Commission has recommended the introduction of a maternity support grant that will seek to assist pregnant women and new mothers. The move set to cost 3 billion rand per year. Last week, the National Treasury announced the extension of social welfare programs for another year during the medium-term budget policy statement. There have been discussions around policy reforms in the refunding model of the child support grant to include vulnerable mothers beyond 2025. Can we afford it in our social policy framework? Let's talk to Executive Director of Social Policy Initiative, Isabel Fry. Isabel, thank you very much for joining us. Can we afford another $3 billion?
Thanks very much, John. Thanks for the invitation. And I think the release of this report shows how critically important the social security debate is and will continue to be in South Africa. As you pointed out, the Minister of Finance in the MTBPS last week announced quite a surprise extension of the 350 Rand social relief of distress grant. We know that the current child support grant goes to just under 14 million children of a 520 Rand per person per month. And yet we are looking at approximately 15 million people, adults, working age adults, every month who are applying for the social relief of distress grant. So what we have, I am coming to answer your question, but I'm just giving you the context, which is that what we have in this country is we've got a constitutional right to everybody to social security if they need it. You've got your sort of cash transfers, which are for poor people. But we don't have a category in the Social Assistance Act for working age people. You've got your children, people with disabilities, old age people, no 18 to 59-year-olds. So the fact is that women who fall pregnant, and particularly during that first 1,000 days from fertilization to birth and early feeding, they require additional support in order to get the kinds of nutrition that the infant needs, the growing infant. Now the question is giving a piecemeal grant, a maternity grant to women, the best policy alternative? 3 billion Rand, currently our social grants are 253 billion Rand per year.
Okay.
Sorry. So 3 billion is small to that. My concern is that by doing a piecemeal response, what we're not doing is looking at the whole social security system and trying to see something which would prevent piecemeal increases. Because we saw that with the child support grant. Initially, if you remember, it was introduced to children under the age of 7, and then 11, and then 15, and then 18. As people took the government to court and litigated. The law reform recommendation is a very good one because it emphasizes vulnerability. But you'll also remember that Minister of Finance last week recommended he announced a review of all social grants. Now, I've spoken to a couple of people in the Department of Social Development and they weren't aware of this. But that's, in my view, using the research that came through from the law report's recommendations, because there's a lot of work in that. Looking at the 8 years that we did at NEDLAC on comprehensive social security review, now's the time to take that. Say people are calling for a universal basic income. People are calling for a decent level of income support. Now we need to actually start making the implementation plans and designs that roll out. Because, don't forget, we have got just about 12 million adults who are unemployed. And most of those people are permanently unemployed. Of the people who applied for the social relief of distress grant, 60% had never worked before. So it's not a temporary loss of jobs. It's permanent. And we've got no permanent assistance. So this is an interesting phenomenon, but more so, I think, because it shows another category of deeply vulnerable people in South Africa, which is the most unequal country in the world. It's not that we don't have the money. It's that the money is tied up amongst very few people and is not being distributed. And so children are born without the cognitive ability to enter into the labour market in time to become productive workers and to contribute back into the revenue.
The way I would look at it, a very long answer, Isabel Fry, is I would look at it like this. 3 billion Rand a year is what it's going to cost the country. What does it currently cost the country to not look after those children and not give that grant? In other words, children dying, children being malnourished, parents giving up their children. That's got to be the balance that is being balanced or being worked on here, right?
Absolutely. And you'll remember in the last 6 months, there have been 3 tragic incidences that the media have reported, so those are just that the media have picked up, of mothers who have actually taken their own lives and the lives of their children. They said, we can't go on. Now, that is a significant cost on society. I was getting to that point in my very long answer of saying that the cognitive development of children, both in utero as well as in the first 7 years, is critical. If we're not investing in that, we have children who will not form that cognitive ability. I mean, one of the reasons why children in grade 4 are not able to read and write is it's not 100% poor teaching. It's the fact that their brains have not developed and will not develop. So we will be carrying, as a country, people who are never able to reach their full potential, who will have behavioral challenges in terms of ability to cope with anger and adjust, but health as well. I mean, diabetes, all these lifestyle diseases have links back to early childhood development. So the costs have accumulated. It's not just in South Africa, I want to say. I mean, I've just been doing a research paper that looks at globally with the reduction in the welfare state and the rise of the small state. You've got this massive pushback as countries are now looking 30 years down the line what the cost is to society, to the fiscus, of the short-term cuts for political expediency when new political parties came into power.
Talk about the welfare. There will be critics, and I will get messages to say you're just going to make more babies now, as women are going to look to make some money on the side, and they're not really going to look after their children. They're just doing it for the money. Does welfare and do grants work?
Grants work 100%, and there has been so much research released in South Africa as well as other countries in the last 10 years that have shown the productive developmental impact of grants, even the 350 child support grant. Your question about the dependency, I think that's something that people just need to think about, because it's the design of the benefit. And I've had many discussions with the Minister of Finance and said it's not the grants that create dependency. It's the fact that you introduce a means test. So for any person who takes a grant and tries to work, they're going to lose that grant. So you're selling tomatoes on the side of the road, you get 350 rand. You try and sell a few more tomatoes, you get 360 rand. You are kicked out of the system because means test. Next month there's rain, you don't sell anything, you are back on the pavement. So we need to be looking at how we use grants to incentivize people to get into the labor market, to support them through. The point about will women start falling pregnant, we also need to recognize that if your only access to income is designed in such a way, what are the negative implications that policymakers are putting poor women in? Because that's the question. What choices are being given to women who have no access to income? There are very few people who will make the rational decision to say, I'm going to take upon raising a child for the next 18 years when I have no income. But where this does exist, it's because of the choices that women are being given, and they don't have many choices, and those feasible ones.
This is a proposal by the SA Law Reform Commission. When will we see this either being put in or not being put in?
I think having heard what the Minister's spokesperson, Lumka Olifant, said, there is at the moment quite a large white paper reform process, so that will feed into it. We certainly haven't, it's not in the MTBPS, it won't be in next year's budget, and I do think that what it should do is to feed into an 18-month process, which will probably lead up to the 2025-26 budget, if it does come through. But I do hope that we have a better and a broader review of income support rather than just this piecemeal effect. Having said that, I do support the fact that pregnant women certainly need a lot more nutritional support and income support than they currently have.
Executive Director of Social Policy Initiative, Isabel Fry, thank you very much.
SAFM, leading the conversation.
It's been a rainy spring. Everyone is asking when the severe weather conditions will subside. Farmers may be able to profit from higher than normal rainfall well into the summer crop season of March next year. That's according to the South African Weather Service's season climate report. Next Guest believes that the El Nino conditions may set up the local agriculture sector for a bumper 23-24 season. I always thought El Nino made a drought. Well, let's find out more with Wandile Sihlobo, the chief economist at the Agricultural Business Chamber of South Africa, author of A Country of Two Agricultures. Wandile, thank you very much. Seen your book on the shelves. I'm going to buy it one day, I promise. I thought El Nino made droughts and things, and it was bad for farmers.
I'm glad, John, you're starting with the most important thing. Get that book.
John, yeah, I mean, that's really the fundamental understanding. I mean, we are coming now as South Africa from about 4 consecutive seasons of a La Nina, which was above normal rainfall, and that has been excellent for our agricultural sector.
Right.
So our understanding at the start of this year was that we're now transitioning and moving to what we call an El Nino, which will be below normal rainfall. And we're very worried about this to say, okay, then as we have gotten accustomed to good rains, how will this impact our sector, especially as we have load shedding and the other things that may constrain irrigation. But now we see the South African Weather Service and saying, hold on, it seems that at least from in the central to the eastern side of South Africa, we could see good rains throughout to March. And I think if that happens, and considering we have good soil moisture from those good summer rainfall of the past 4 seasons, we may as well, John, really have a favorable agricultural season. And that's really what we're looking at this point.
So instead of making hay while the sun shines, it's plant crops while there's still moisture in the ground.
I do think, though, that, John, the guys in the field, I mean, if they're listening to this, that's what I would suggest to say. It is better if we plant early.
All right.
Because as you know, that typically in South Africa, folks in the eastern side, if you're traveling on the N1 from Limpopo all the way to the Eastern Cape, if you are in the east, farmers usually plant their grains and oilseeds somewhere between mid-October to mid-November. Then in the west, mid-November to mid-December. But I would say now people shouldn't wait for longer. The sooner they put the grains in, even if then El Nino does start somewhere in January, February, the crop would have been at an advanced stage of growth, and I think that's what the folks should really be doing.
Okay, so good weather conditions. We've had these floods and things as well, Wandile. Has that affected the farmers, washed topsoil off, and they're struggling to get crops in?
That has been a major issue in the Western Cape.
Mm-hmm.
We've come up now with the numbers on the Western Cape saying, look, the wheat crop in South Africa is still really good, a few percentages up from what we harvested last year. But what we see now being a challenge is that the quality of that crop may have been affected by the massive rains, as well as the barley. The quality of that barley that goes into our beer production may be affected. But as to say, the scale, how much of that has been negatively affected, that's something that we will have a clearer sense of it in the coming days. But I must say, though, John, on the infrastructure side, in the farms, in the Western Cape, that's where also there's been a bit of a damage and a cost for the guys.
Let's talk about that. Earlier we spoke to Satawu, who are against a suggestion that there'll be privatization in the city of Cape Town's port. As an economist in the Agricultural Business Chamber, can you explain what a port that is not running at 100%, what effect that has not only on the farmers but also on our economy?
I think, John, from an agricultural perspective, what will be important to put forward here is that if you think about our sector, we are in an export-oriented agricultural sector. I mean, last year, for example, we exported about half of what we produced. That was valued at just under $13 billion. Now, if you think about the path forward, we have a lot of trees that are yet to be bearing the fruits, and we continue to see good harvest, and the projections on production going forward is that we'll have more volumes. All of this will need to be moving to the export market. So if our ports are not as efficient with these perishable products, then of course that does make us to be uncompetitive and be costly. And of course then if the agricultural sector is not as profitable and it experiences these challenges, there are also jobs at stake in the process. So my sense is it's either privatization or not, but the central point that from the Agriculture Business Chamber we want is really the efficiencies to continue to improve in the ports. And I would add, John, to say on the railway line, on the roads, because in the Western Cape the roads are fairly in good shape, but the point is we produce things across all of the country. And in a Free State, Eastern Cape, Limpopo, Mpumalanga, the roads in small towns are terrible. And that's also one of the other things that really increases the transaction cost when you think about agriculture.
I'm just thinking about cost as well. It's all very well putting vegetables into a container with air conditioning or a cooler, but that cooler is going to cost with diesel, and we don't always have electricity. That just adds to the cost. Whereas if you chuck it on a ship and you sell it quickly, it's going to be cheaper, and it'll be cheap on the other end as well.
Absolutely, John.
Right.
And I do think that this is important because this is a sector that is growing. So we do have to have infrastructure that is functional and supportive of the sector so that we can continue to grow.
Amazing. Everything's related. Wandile Seklobo, thank you very much. Chief Economist at the Agricultural Business Chamber of South Africa, also the author of A Country of Two Agricultures. How that story about the ports, what was it, an hour ago, is still related to the weather conditions in the sky. It's the rain, and it's all connected. And there's a links in the chains are broken. And that's what we're experiencing at the moment. We have sport and weather coming up in a moment. Let's get the latest news headlines. We got the Luyanda. No, it's not Luyanda. Who's reading our news for us today? Let's find out in our news headlines at 5:30.
Here's Dineo, John. Good afternoon. Let's take a look at the headlines at 5:30.
Six now.
Yeah.
But just looking at the table, we were talking off air while the headlines were on about what the permutations are. And I think the bottom line is Afghanistan's run rate is not good enough. So Afghanistan are going to have to beat South Africa.
Yeah, and that is on Friday.
Because either New Zealand or Pakistan are going to play, and they will go to 10 points, whichever one. So even if Afghanistan are on 10 points, their run rate won't be good enough. So Afghanistan needs to beat South Africa.
And if Australia win today, they will secure a semi-final spot because they're sitting third on the log. They have 10 points, and only time will tell if they will win this one against Afghanistan. But they're sitting on 183 for 7. Earlier on, Afghanistan posted 291 for 5 in their 50 overs after winning the toss and electing to bat first. And Ibrahim Zadran top scored with an unbeaten 129, marking Afghanistan's first World Cup century. Then in still staying with cricket, Bangladesh captain Shakib Al Hassan has been ruled out of his side's World Cup match because of a left index finger injury. He will fly back to Dakar today. Bangladesh, who are already out of the contention for a semi-final place, conclude their group stage campaign against Australia on Saturday. Then there's some DStv Premiership action. Golden Arrows will be looking to regain second spot on the log when they face Royal AM tonight. Abafana Bastene have never beaten Royal AM in their 5 previous clashes. Arrows lost 3-0 to Amazulu in the the Carling knockout on Saturday. But in the league, they've been superb this campaign with 6 wins from their 9 games, the only defeat coming at Mamelodi Sundowns. A win at Royal AM will take them to within a point of Sundowns at the top of the table, even though they have played 2 more games. Also in action today, Stellenbosch FC host Richards Bay. Orlando Pirates, who are still licking their wounds from the weekend, welcomes Kukuna United at Orlando Stadium, and captain Daniel Cardoso says that they're ready for the clash.
I heard him say earlier that Pirates have the better of us, but last season they didn't beat us. They only beat us now in the M10-8, you know. And like Coach said, it sticks in our head, obviously, 5-0. It's going to stick in our heads, but we've got to get over that. We're all men, we're not little boys. It comes to the day, and we've got to show up.
Well, kickoff is at 7:30. Also, Champions League returns tonight. Manchester City continue their defense with a home game against Young Boys. City have won all 3 of their Champions League matches 3-1 and will be confident of gaining another 3 points against Rafael Wiki's side. Kevin De Bruyne is still out with a hamstring injury that has sidelined him since the opening weekend of the Premier League season. Erling Haaland may not be risked after being withdrawn at halftime against Bournemouth with a twisted ankle. However, he was seen training yesterday, so only time will tell if he will play today. Meanwhile, Real Madrid coach Carlo Ancelotti says that Jude Bellingham is a doubt for his team's clash with Braga in the Champions League tomorrow after the midfielder hurt his shoulder at the weekend. Madrid can reach the knockout stages with another victory at Santiago Bernabeu after 3 straight wins, but maybe without their top goal scorer, although he did not complete part of the team's training session today. Bellingham, who has scored 13 goals in 14 matches across all competitions, suffered a shoulder problem on Sunday, even though he played the full game. Then Comrades Marathon Association chairperson Ngobo has unveiled next year's campaign slogan for the Comrades Marathon, "No Doubt, Nakanjani," an interference to the Comrades athletes' firm belief in power, stature, and attraction of the world's biggest, oldest, and most loved ultra marathon. The 97th Comrades Marathon will be an uprun, and it's happening on the 9th of June next year, starting at the Durban City Hall at 5:30 and finishing 12 hours later at the Hollywood Bed Scottsville Race Course. As with the previous upruns, the distance will be 87 kilometers. This will be the 49th Comrades uprun, and the entry opened this morning and will close at 4:30 on the 11th of December, or once the entry cap of 23,000 has been reached, whichever comes first.
I won't be one of them. I will be watching.
I want to do it.
You want to do it?
Yeah.
Do it.
One of these good days.
Not next year, the year after. Do that one.
Yeah. I think I still need to lose a bit of weight.
With the
and
club.
train.
You see, now we're on this. We're on the streaming and the interwebs. We have to lose weight now. You see.
But I'm not that big.
No, you're fit. I'm not commenting. I'm old enough to know. I'm old enough to know when to shh.
Exactly. Let's move on to golf news. Tristan Lawrence has confirmed that he will defend his Investec South African Open title as he returns to the Blair Athol Golf and Equestrian Estate from the 30th of November to the 3rd of December. The 2023 edition of this event aims to give all South Africans an unforgettable experience at the country's most historic tournament, and Lawrence will be joined by a quality Sunshine Tour and DP World Tour co-sanctioned field, including the likes of Christian Bezuidenhout, Daniel van der Tonder, and Brendan Stone. That's it. It's a wrap from my side. Just a quick update on that score. Australia now is sitting on 190 for 7. Yeah.
You see, it changes just as you want to.
Literally.
I've got 186 for 7, but I think they just hit a 4 now.
Yeah,
so it's
they just hit
197 for 4.
Yeah.
Needing 98 runs off 16.
They need 102 runs.
102 runs.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, yeah, let's see if Australia will be able to beat Afghanistan. That's it from my side. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dubin Khapele Mudimugyo.
#SAFMBTH. One of the most violently gifted lightweights to have traded leather in the hexagon returns
host, Jimmy Moyaha. Hello, Jimmy.
Hello, John. How are you?
Look, all those things on your Twitters. I want to find out what a solutionist is one day.
We solve problems, John. We solve problems. And speaking of problems that we're solving, Dumi wants to do the comrades.
Yes.
My sound engineer has done 15 comrades marathons. So you and I, 15. So you and I can sit and follow them.
Yeah.
We'll sit in the car, we'll drive behind them, and they can run the comrades peacefully.
You see, I'm a big fan of a runner's high, and I sat and watched the comrades for 12 hours this year, and I didn't get the runner's high once. I'm very confused. What's happening? What's happening in the markets?
The markets are quite interesting. It's been a gloomy day, much like the weather, and news has just broken out of the U.S. that one of the U.S. senators has called for an immediate review of South Africa's AGOA eligibility. This comes after we've just hosted the AGOA summit quite successfully. So that's quite interesting. That's just developing in the last hour or two. But remember WeWork that I spoke to you about yesterday, saying there was some interesting developments there and something to watch? Well, they've gone and filed for bankruptcy following our conversation. We speak to WeWork South Africa, though, to see how this bankruptcy in the US is going to potentially affect the South African business, if at all. We speak to the executive director at WeWork South Africa and just get a sense of what the implications are. The Phala Phala report is out. For those that missed it, I put it out on social media today. The Reserve Bank put it out, and we're just going to look at that report in a bit more detail and just see, because coming out of the judgment or the pronouncement from the SARB previously was around that report finding that the president had done nothing wrong, effectively. So we just look into some of the finer details of the report now that we have the 35-page document. And then we take a look at another report, this time published by EY, that is formerly Ernst & Young. They published a report around foreign direct investments in South Africa and Africa, and they're saying that foreign direct investments in South Africa are at their highest levels since 2016. Now, this is particularly interesting because we've been grey listed, we have been battling load shedding, and yet investors are still finding South Africa as an attractive destination. So we look at that report and some of the data that comes out of that, and then we take a look at the solar aspect of properties. It seems as though even though properties are becoming increasingly more expensive because of interest rates and inflation, and because installing solar is not a cheap exercise, somehow if you have solar in your property, it makes it more attractive. So we speak to Standard Bank about that, and then because Tuesday is our property feature day, we take a look at the hotspots for property investors in the Western Cape. It seems as though the Western Cape's growing in popularity in terms of investment and destination across various types of properties and various price points. So we just take a look at that in a bit more detail. But before we get to that, we've had Henko Creer keeping an eye on the markets throughout the day for us. Good afternoon, Henko. Thank you so much, as always, for keeping an eye on the markets. The market's having a day much like the weather?
Yes, Jimmy. Good evening to you and to John, and good evening to all the listeners. Like you said, it was definitely a glooming day, but it really was a bit of a bloodbath on the JSE today, with the all-share index losing 2.5% and deciding to close at a level of 71,465 points. But it's the resources index that really lost a lot of value today and fell by 4.5%, almost by 5% today. That's the resources index. And then the financial index lost 2.2%, and the industrial index finished 1.5% lower. And finished 4.6% down today. It's almost 5% weaker. First Rand, 3.5% down. Glencore lost 3%. BHP, 2.7% weaker. And Standard Bank as well as Naspers each finishing 2% weaker. And then we saw these mining companies do really well these last couple of days. But today they're tumbling. Exxaro losing 7%. Sibanye-Stillwater, 6.5% down. Harmony, 6% weaker. Implats, Goldfields and Thungela each lost 5.5% today. And DRD Gold and Amplats finished 5% weaker. I really had to go and search long and far for any companies that gave strong performances today. Couldn't find any of them except maybe for Pick n Pay, which gained 1%. Mass finished 1% stronger. And Sappi and Equities and Zoho Sun, those three finished 0.8% stronger at the end of the day. But really nothing to write home to about. Then on the commodities market, the price of gold currently $1,962 an ounce. Silver $22.50. Platinum trading at $897 an ounce. and palladium at $1,060. Brent crude now trading at $82.90 a barrel. And the rand looking very similar to how it looked yesterday, now sitting at 18 rand 37 to the US dollar, 22 rand 61 to the pound, 19 rand 61 to the euro, and 11 rand 80 to the Australian dollar. A Bitcoin will cost you $34,700. That's more or less 660,000 rand for a whole Bitcoin. So, Jimmy, yeah, let's see how things and the news out of the US unfolds. But not a great day, but let's hope the picture changes as the week progresses.
Thank you for that update, Enku. I'm going to choose to find the silver lining in the fact that oil prices are the lowest they've been since August. We're going to hold on to that for dear life because we know if that starts to turn around, the picture looks very, very different. Commodities prices also not doing the best on today's trade. That's probably what's driving the resources counters down and what caused the resources sector to be down about 4%. But we'll dig into this in greater detail just after 6 p.m. For now, John, it's back to you and the team.
Well, the rand is strong as well. Are we hoping a petrol price going down in December? Can I need the fill in. It
Don't
doesn't
say it.
count.
Don't say it so loudly.
When Fifi was around, I always said that when I filled in for Eldrin, the markets were green, and that's changed these days.
So we blame you, John.
It's always my fault. Thank you very much. Plenty more coming up in the Money Web Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha after the news at 6.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Australia still with that 7 wicket, 196 for 7. Let's go to calls. Favorite time of the show. I love this time. 0614 104 107. We'll take some voice notes, but give us a call now. As you heard, 086 000 2032. Louis is in Durban. Louis or Louise? Louise. Hello, Louise. You want to talk about Satawa and Transnet?
Yeah. The figures that you were given are incorrect because Transnet actually made a loss in the March 2023 year.
Yeah, Satawa said they made a profit of 5 billion.
No, it's a loss of 5.7 billion.
Okay.
And in fact, they need to spend money on their aging infrastructure, but to service their debt, it's costing them R1 billion a month. So they do not have a strong balance sheet, so they can't get more funding. So they did ask Minister Godongwana for funding from the government, but in his interim budget, he said he was not doing that for Transnet. And they are not it's not an efficient company. I mean, over the last how long? I'm not sure how long ago, the CEO resigned. The top brass resigned. There's another thing that's quite interesting because they're inefficient. Certain shipping lines, I'll mention them specifically, MISC and MSC, have now said that they're going to introduce a congestion charge. So this is an additional charge because they are having to, there's so many, if you look out at across the harbour, you'll see ships standing waiting.
I was in Durban. I was in Mhlanga the other day. I counted 25 ships waiting outside the port.
Yeah. And so now so what happens? She's the young lady was talking about a private enterprise not giving jobs, but they do. I mean, Patrice Motsepe, when they were talking about going private, he actually said it was a good thing. They all for it. And but the unions are the ones who are against it. I mean, they made one of the biggest contributors to their loss, I think, I stand under correction, was the freight rail. I mean, I don't know if you've heard about what happens in Richards Bay. Okay, we're not talking about but there are always trucks.
Yeah, there's always trucks.
Yeah.
The rail infrastructure is costing percentages of GDP because it's just not there.
Exactly, and they need money they can't raise the money to repair. And they need to repair that because they need to get the trucks off the road,
It sounds like you have some sort of interest in this, Louise.
Yeah, I've worked in the harbour around, and I'm in a company that actually deals with Transnet.
Right.
for since I'd say about 25 years.
Right, so you know what you're talking about. All right, Louise, thank you very much for highlighting that and correcting some of the figures that was given to us by Satawu. Thank you very much. Let's go to Pietermaritzburg, just up the road from Durban, to Mbiyiso, about the Springbok emblem. Mbiyiso, what do you think about it?
You know what? Good evening, John.
Yeah, how's it?
Yes. You know what? Julius, don't ever listen to that guy. I will tell you why. This thing of changing the emblem, it doesn't help. It's like this thing of changing the names, the boards, the road signs, and then the Springbok. This is the natural. It is not that actually this team is named after the name of someone. History will always be there. Let us just take something positive out of that history now. According to Malema, he wanted to be changed simply because it's a sport of fair food and what that he made a list of those people. But tell me if I'm lying. Who's representing Malema in court? Is it not a white man? Who actually is charged along with Malema in court? He's not a white man. But on the other hand, he wants us to believe that actually a white man is bad, and therefore we should not follow anything which was great. I mean, he's staying in the suburb established by white men.
Let's leave the race out of it. I like what you said earlier, Mbuyiso, about history doesn't change. You can change the name of the Springboks to, I don't know, the Roses, or to the Proteas, men's Proteas rugby side. The history of South African rugby still exists, even if you change the name. You know what? Let me tell you something. Why can't you say the same with the soccer team? Well, that's my point. That's my point. It's dominated by white. No, but that's a completely different issue. My point is that, and I think the one we're going to stick on from what you said, Mbuyiso, is that history doesn't go away. You can change the name from the Proteas to the Springboks. You can call them, I don't know, the Buffaloes if you want. But the history of Springbok or history of rugby in South Africa will always remain. The fact is that people have moved on, and we are seeing positives coming out of that emblem now. We're seeing a great rugby team that is uniting us. But now, Malema want to make it a race issue, and therefore you can't say I must not make it a race issue. Okay, the issue is that he make it a race issue, which is not a race issue. It cannot be. The Springbok got nothing to do with race. Yes, we know there's a history, but that history can't be just things. You know what? Malema is politicking. I mean, he's politicking. We should not listen to that guy. All right. I mean, we should not listen to that guy. Please. Mbuyiso in Pietermaritzburg, thank you very much. Don't listen to Julius Malema because he's politicking. Is it Kai in East London? Hi there.
Afternoon, John and SAFM listeners.
Go ahead.
I would like to talk about the incident that had just happened this morning whereby a Minister of Transport was robbed of her belongings. I would just like to say this is just the beginning. There comes a time where the criminals will visit their families as well as these high-profile politicians until they feel the pain we feel down here where we are, that the Constitution with regards to what we call correctional services whatsoever should be amended. Things like bail applications, granting of bails and stuff like that, protection of criminals, the rights, thousands rights they have more than us, the people who are being robbed or like people who are victims. I want to say that we are not protected enough in this country, and we've been talking about that for years. Now that one of them has been slapped on the face, I think government will start to scrutinize that aspect, that criminals should be treated as criminals. All right. And they shouldn't be protected the way it happened. Even now, I wish that he should have got one clap on her face just to sort of wake up and pass the message to the seniors that no, crime is right in South Africa. Thank you.
Kai, you don't want to wish harm on anybody, but Kai in East London, thank you very much for your views. That's the show for today. I'll be back again tomorrow. Thanks very much to the team. They're going to get their credits from DZ, but we leave you with the words of Flavia Whedon, who once said, if one dream should fall and break into 1,000 pieces, never be afraid to pick one of those pieces up and begin again. Nati plays us out. I'll see you tomorrow.
Good evening, SAFM. I would like to thank our team today. I'll start with the captain, John, Vusi, Kagiso, Tumi, Temba.